Now let's talk about whitespace management. Whitespace management is basically taking advantage of the space at the bottom of an invoice when you have some to insert promotional data. So what we have here is a template that's already open, and we have an image at the bottom. Now this image basically is promotional data. If we don't have space at the bottom of our template, we don't want it to appear. So as it is now by default, on my first page, it appears at the bottom and that's all fine. On my second record, the template would produce 2 pages anyways, so it's still fine that the image appears. On the third record, however, we have the image alone on the second page, and this is what we don't want. We don't want a second page created just for promotional data. So how can we fix this? Well, it's actually fairly simple. All we need to do is to check one option. However, I do want to note that whitespace management must be done on an element on the root. What we want to do is to click on the actual paragraph. So we're telling this paragraph by checking the whitespace element, don't appear if you would be creating a new page. There are a couple of considerations, however. Let me go back to the first record. And we have no space between the end of the table where the grand total is located and the image itself. What you don't want to do is to add a new paragraph in between. Because if you do add a paragraph, this paragraph is considered content, and you may have the table, a new page, and then only the paragraph with the image. So you wouldn't be any more advanced. So you'd end up with basically the same result, but an extra paragraph. What you want to do in this case is simply change the properties of the paragraph just to add some spacing to it. So I'll go in Format, Paragraph, and just change the spacing to add some at the top. So what happens here is that because the whole paragraph, including the spacing, is the whitespace element, I still get the same result. I don't have a second page, even though I have some spacing between the table and the whitespace element. Now, a couple of miscellaneous facts. You can have multiple whitespace elements. If you have 2 or 3 elements, these smaller invoices that have 1 or 2 lines may show 2 or 3 of the whitespace elements, whereas something that just uses half the page would show, say, only 1 element. It won't order them randomly, so the one that you find the most important would be the first one on top, and then optional ones would come after. The other fact is that not only paragraphs can be made whitespace elements. It can be a paragraph, a table, it can be any element that is on the root of your page. It won't really make a difference as long as it has some space that it takes. So this won't work for positioned box because they are absolutely positioned on the page, but it will work for any element that is part of the text flow.